Hello and welcome to this special Shetland Wool Week broadcast. Today we take a deep dive into an exquisite pet at the Shetland Museum and Archives collection in the company of one of the curators, textile specialist Carol Christiansen.
My name is Carol Christiansen and I'm one of the curators here at Shetland Museum and Archives.
Tell us about the display cabinets we're standing in front of here, Carol.
Well, we're in the textile gallery, and this tells the story of the textile industry in Shetland. And we're focusing today on cases to do with lace, the lace industry. We have some drawers and we have two display cases that outline the history of the lace industry in Shetland.
So just tell us about the contents of this stunning case, Carol.
Well, this one is a small case, but it does outline how lace was actually made, because it's quite a complicated process. And many people look at fine lace knitting and think it's just about the knitting. But actually, there was a lot of other things going on to make it what it is. And in particular, it was really important that the wool was chosen properly, so it had to be very fine and as long as possible. Because it needed to be strong. It needed to be processed properly with carding or with combing. And then it needed to be spun really, really evenly for a long, long length. So if it wasn't done properly, that would show up in the lace knitting. And some women specialized in spinning only for lace. And there was a small market, there was a small industry, a small market for that. We don't know very much about it. It was all very sort of under the board, as it were, because they supplied to local merchants, and they also sold spun yarn for lace to the Scottish mainland.
And Shetland has a reputation for incredibly fine Shetland lace knitwear. So where does that start? How does that evolve?
We think that it began in the late 1830s, and that was a time when there was a considerable amount of famine in Shetland. People were actually starving to death. It seems to have started in southern Unst, possibly to provide women with income through knitting, but with a specialized type of knitting, because of course Shetlanders had been knitting at that point for 3 to 4 centuries, but they also had the skills to do spinning and knitting very, very finely. And of course the wool was fine. And so instead of knitting socks or something like that, they were putting their effort more toward doing fine knitting. And of course, at this time, it's the Victorian period. Victoria comes on the throne at this time, and she's quite a fashion icon. And she is gifted Shetland lace, and that tends to start the industry off.
And what does this display case tell us about this story?
Well, this one shows the spinning wheel that was used. You can see hand cards here that were used to process the wool before it was spun. And also up here is a smoking barrel. This was used to whiten the lace once it was finished. So once it was knitted, there was a finishing process that took place. Sulfur was put in the bottoms of these barrels and smoked, and the lace was put on a shelf on the top. And that helped to whiten the wool to make the shawls really quite white. And then after that, the garment was stretched on a frame to make it an even shape. And then it was ready for export.
And the card here shows precisely how fine that wool is.
Yes, this is an example of lace yarn. We have a number of these pieces in the collection, and it's incredibly fine. There were complaints by some merchants that hand spinners were knitting too fine to be knitted with. So this is how fine it was going. It was almost ridiculously fine, but that's the level that was achieved.
And Carol, we see that knitwear here on this display and in the cabinet next door.
Yes, and this is a new cabinet that we have.
Let's take a look at that. It's breathtaking. I mean, this is spider's web proportion knitwear.
It is spider's web, but it goes through really almost a century of lace knitting and spinning.
Talk us through the chronology then. We started in 1830 or so. Where do we go from there?
Well, the lace really takes off in the 1850s, partly because of Queen Victoria, but partly because of the fashions. You can see here that this is a dress that is a big skirt, and this was a style in the really starting in the 1840s, so just when lace takes off. And it goes really into, say, the 1870s. So huge skirts made that way with a crinoline. And of course, your shawl is draped over your shoulders, and then it's folded in half as a triangle, and then the two tiers are displayed like this on your body. And that's how it was meant to be worn. So you can see here that the border of the shawl is really crucial to the design of it, because that's what's seen by the people looking at you in your drawing room.
Tell us about the occasions that this lace was worn for, Carol.
Well, this really wasn't worn by many Shetlanders. This was exported to the Scottish mainland and into even as far as London, and we know it went to New York, Australia, Paris. This became really high fashion in really about by 1860s, and an international trade in it. But this is for wealthier people, upper middle class, and really, well, royalty and aristocracy. Probably mainly worn at home, but we do know that Shetland knitters made opera cloaks in lace and lots of other accessories, because the Victorian women were really into their accessories. Veils. So here we have a veil that is for mourning. So these were dyed black. They were knit not in black yarn, natural black, but they were dyed black and worn with a hat. So it's a face veil. We also have here, this is a test piece that was done for Queen Victoria's 80th birthday in 1899. So the original went to the palace, but the knitters designed this and made two of them, and the best one, of course, went away. But it has associations with royalty, so there's the St. Andrew's cross there. You can see it says 1899. That's put in the design. And there's a crown here that's similar to the crown that Queen Victoria wore at that time.
And elements of Shetland kind of symbolism there too?
A little bit, but really this is more for, we think these are like pineapple designs, and that was a reference to empire, because at that point she was an empress of the empire, and it's also a symbol of hospitality. Shetlanders also experimented or got orders for knitting in other fibers, so silk, mohair, and we have a pillow form made in cotton back there. Mm-hmm. So they weren't just using their local wool. We also have a couple of shawls and stoles that are here just to show the different motifs.
And so it's domestic wear largely. We're talking drawing rooms.
Yes.
Public display at the opera.
Yes.
For gifts, clearly.
Yes.
What about the kind of interiors? Was this a new movement at all, or was this quite a one-off?
I think this is more early 20th century, when women had not necessarily boudoirs, but you had feminine soft furnishings for the home. In the 20s, Shetland lace was made into bed jackets, sometimes with an edging in swan's down, and that's for the really well-to-do.
That sounds exquisite.
Yes, but it's for homeware. It's not to be seen by the public. But this is sort of interwar period when women's fashions changed. Things got quite, we might say a bit risque compared to Victorian and Edwardian period. This blouse is also from that period. This is from the late 20s or early 30s. It's sort of a tunic style with a drawstring, and we have several other blouses like this. One of them, which is a bit smaller than this one, weighs only 18 grams. That's how much wool is in a blouse, and it's about a women's size 10.
And the customer for this?
Again, well-heeled, might go to shooting parties or golf or that kind of thing. Not Shetlanders. This was exported, although some of these were for Shetland women who married and left Shetland. Expats. Or had Shetland connections, yeah.
And then these pieces, clearly, Carol, are from a completely different time.
Well, we felt it was really important to show the continuity of Shetland lace. I mean, it just continues to be fashionable. And of course, it's very popular among knitters today. But we have a dress. We were able to purchase a dress by Angela Irvin of Walza. This was a dress that she did in her university course. And it has a hand-knitted Shetland lace top and sleeves in traditional patterns. And then she has a silk skirt that she designed digitally. So it's a really modern way to bring lace forward into the 21st century. And then we also have a cuff made by Helen Robertson, and that's in silver.
So if people choose to come and visit Shetland or to attend Wool Week in future, are there particular areas of Shetland still, Lycons, that they should go to pursue lace in particular?
Yes, definitely, Aunts, but there are teachers around Shetland that still continue to teach lace and also spin lace. So it's possible that you can learn both. And there are still lace pieces for sale as well, made by local makers.
They're still a source of huge pride, I know.
Yeah.
In 2018, I married, and I was lucky enough to wear the lace shawl that my mother knitted before I was born.
Fantastic.
And entered into the WISE show and won first prize.
Yeah.
So it was just such a special day because of that. And looking at these exhibits, Carol, you just bring it to life so beautifully, and who wouldn't salivate over these gorgeous pieces?
They're really inspiring, I think, for knitters to see what's achievable. And we're really pleased that we have such a large collection of Shetland lace, and we're now safeguarding this.
And Shetland is the place to come and see this up close and
Absolutely.
in detail. Yeah. Thank you so much, Carol Christiansen. It's been a joy.
Thank you.
Thanks to Carol Christiansen and to you for watching. We hope to see you soon at Shetland Museum and Archives.